Welcome to the Phil and H Travel Podcast. Is it worth it? Imagine for a second that you have spent, months dreaming of this ultimate wilderness escape. You book a flight to the Swedish Arctic, you pack 40 pounds of gear, and you walk for 15 grueling miles through driving rain.
Oh, yeah, just howling wind, too.
Right, howling wind. And you finally arrive at this wooden mountain cabin. You are exhausted, freezing, and just completely ready for a hot meal and a soft bed. You hand over $50, and the warden looks you in the eye, hands you a thin foam pad, and points to a sliver of floor space in a muddy hallway.
With like 10 other strangers stepping over you.
Exactly. Welcome to Kungsleden, the King's Trail. Today we are taking a massive deep dive into auditing one of the most famous, stunning, and frankly, most misunderstood hiking routes on the entire planet. We're auditing Kungsleden in Swedish Lapland.
It is so misunderstood, honestly.
It really is. So if you're planning a trip and want the honest, is it worth it verdict before you book, follow the show on Spotify or Apple. Because today, we are giving you the unvarnished reality of what this trail actually demands from you.
And it demands a lot.
I mean, Kungsleden as a whole is a roughly 440-kilometer trail cutting straight through the Arctic tundra of northern Sweden. But let's set the parameters right away because almost nobody actually walks 440 kilometers.
That is exactly right. When people talk about hiking the King's Trail, when you see those incredible photos on Instagram or read the glowing travel blogs, the vast majority of visitors are targeting one highly specific, deeply concentrated northern stretch.
Right. So where exactly is that?
You are looking at the route starting in the north at Abisko, heading south down to the Nikkaluokta trailhead. Depending on the exact detours you take to access certain cabins, it is about 103 to 110 kilometers.
Okay, so that's a much more manageable chunk.
Yeah, for a fit walker, that generally requires 6 to 7 days on foot. And the reason we are doing this deep dive right now, looking ahead to the 2026 and 2027 seasons, is because there is a very real, very unforgiving urgency to this specific landscape.
Right, because this isn't like booking a trip to a city in Europe where, if you go in November, you just wear a heavier coat.
Yeah.
What exactly is the ticking clock for you if you want to hike this trail? I know the window is tight, but how tight are we actually talking?
You are looking at a brutally short summer walking window. It runs strictly from late June to mid-September. That is an absolute maximum of 10 to 12 weeks.
Wow, that is all you get for the entire year.
That is it. And this window is essentially bracketed by two severe environmental phenomena that will cost you either your physical comfort or a massive amount of your money.
Okay, I don't like the sound of either of those. What's on the early side?
On the early side of that window, in late June and July, you are battling apocalyptic swarms of Lapland mosquitoes.
Apocalyptic, great. And the late side?
On the late side, in mid-September, you are literally racing against the closing dates of the survival huts and the onset of early Arctic snowstorms. You are threading a very tight needle here.
So if you missed that window, you are not just having a slightly subpar holiday, you are walking into a legitimate wilderness survival situation.
Exactly. And I think this brings us to the central tension of this entire deep dive. It is the illusion of a free wilderness. It's this incredible marketing concept of cost and access dressed up as ultimate freedom.
Yeah, because, yes, the trail itself is public land. It is completely free to walk on. Nobody is scanning a ticket at a turnstile in the woods.
Yeah.
But the logistics, the infrastructure you actually need to survive, to eat, to cross frozen lakes, and to get out of the weather.
That infrastructure is going to completely drain your wallet. To give you a preview of that tension, you pay nothing to put your boots on the dirt, but a basic bunk bed in a Swedish Tourist Association cabin, which is known as the STF, now costs around $47 to $62 for a single night.
Wait, $62 for a bunk?
Yep. And there are mandatory boat crossings over massive glacial lakes that cost $15 to $50 each. Plus, the gateway town you have to fly into, a place called Kiruna, is currently physically in the middle of a massive industrial relocation.
Which means even arriving and getting a taxi is in a state of chaotic flux, right?
Exactly. And if you don't want to plan this yourself, and you want to join the famous, highly organized group hike called the Shell Reven Classic, you are paying about $350 just for the adult ticket before you even buy a flight.
That's insane. So we really need to shatter a massive myth right out of the gate here. I know a lot of our listeners are planning their gap years or their big summer sabbaticals. So here is the contrarian claim for this deep dive. Kungsleden is quietly one of the most expensive weeks of hiking in Europe.
It absolutely is. Once you systematically add up the STF hut fees, the mandatory boats, the specialized cold weather gear you have to bring, and the surging cost of Arctic airfare, the numbers are staggering.
So the whole free trail reputation actually causes a lot of disappointment.
Yeah, more disappointment than any other single factor. People arrive expecting a cheap, dirt-bagging, backpacking holiday, and they end up bleeding cash daily just to stay dry and keep moving.
It makes me think of the classic printer trap in consumer electronics.
Yeah.
You know exactly what I mean. You walk into a big box store, you see a sleek new laser printer, and it's practically free. It's like 40 bucks.
Right, you think you found an amazing deal.
Exactly. You think you've absolutely scored, but then a month later you run out of ink. And the replacement ink cartridges cost $80. Buying into Kungsleden is exactly like buying that printer.
That is a phenomenal analogy.
The trail is the free printer, right?
Right.
The logistical ink, the boats, the beds, the freeze-dried food is where they absolutely get you.
Because you have no choice but to buy the ink. You cannot hike this route without engaging with the infrastructure unless you are some hardcore survivalist carrying 2 weeks of food and a pack raft.
Right. So let's systematically break down the actual costs, the hard USD numbers, so you know exactly what you're getting into.
Right.
First, before you even book a flight, you genuinely want to buy an STF adult membership.
Yes, you absolutely do.
Wait, I have to buy a membership to a tourist association just to go on a hike? How does that math work out? What does that run you?
So the STF adult membership is about $38 for the year. And you want this because without it, the STF penalizes you with a non-member surcharge. Every single night you stay in a cabin or even camp next to one costs an extra $10 if you aren't a member.
Okay, so the math is incredibly simple then.
Yeah, if you are spending 4 nights or more on the trail, which you will be on a 6-day traverse, the $38 membership instantly pays for itself.
All right, I bought my membership. I'm on the trail. What are those actual cabin nights costing me? Because earlier I mentioned that 50-buck mattress on the floor.
A standard summer night in a northern Kungsleden cabin is around $47 for an STF member who has the foresight to book ahead online.
And if you don't book ahead,
If you are a non-member, or if you just show up and pay on-site with your credit card, you are looking at about $57 to $62. And remember, that is for a single bunk in a shared room.
now I know our listeners right now are thinking, I'm not paying 60 bucks for a dorm bed. I have a fantastic tent. I'll just sleep outside. So what if you want to bypass the cabin bed entirely, but you still want to use the indoor kitchen because it's pouring rain outside?
You can absolutely do that. Pitching your tent in the designated areas beside an STF cabin grants you full access to their facilities.
Nice. So I get to cook inside.
Yes. You get to use the shared indoor kitchen, you can hang your wet clothes in their heated drawing room, and you can use the wood-fired sauna. But that privilege costs roughly $20 to $30 a night.
Still significantly cheaper than a bunk, though.
It is, but the physical trade-off is that you are now carrying the dead weight of a tent, a sleeping mat, and a heavier sleeping bag on your back for 110 kilometers.
Ugh, fair point. Let's talk about those boats, because this is the part of the Kungsleden logistics that completely shocks people. I'm hiking, I'm in a rhythm, I'm looking at mountains, and suddenly I hit the shore of a massive glacial lake. The trail just literally ends at the water, and someone has their hand out asking for cash.
Yes, the geography of the trail intersects with several massive east-to-west lake systems. On this specific northern route, there are 3 signature boat crossings you have to navigate.
Okay, what are they?
You have the long crossing at Alashar in the north, you have Tuzarar further south, and you have a very popular lake boat that shaves miles off the final stretch running from the Kebnekai's mountain station out to the Nikkaluokta trailhead.
And these are motorized boats.
Yes. Taking these motorized boats will run you between $15 and $50 each. And to be clear, that is not a pass for the whole trip. That is per crossing.
So if I'm tired and I opt to take all 3 of those motorized boats, that is potentially $150 just to get across water on a walking holiday. That is wild.
It adds up fast.
Okay, taking a step back, how are we even getting up to the Arctic Circle in the first place?
You have 2 main logistical arteries originating from Stockholm. The fastest way is to fly. Flights from Stockholm Arlanda Airport up to Kiruna take about 90 minutes.
What if I don't want to fly?
Alternatively, if you want a lower carbon footprint or, the romance of rail travel, you can take the Arctic Circle night train from Stockholm, run by SJ or Vi, which takes roughly 17 to 18 hours.
And what if someone listening is completely overwhelmed by all this? They don't want to calculate boat timetables or buy STF memberships. They just want to show up and have it organized. That's the Fjällräven Classic event in August 2026, right?
Yes, the Fjällräven Classic is a massive, highly organized event where logistics, checkpoints, and some food are handled for you. But you pay a massive premium for that convenience.
How much of a premium?
Tickets for the Classic are about $350 for adults and roughly $230 for youth. That does not include your travel to Sweden. That is just your ticket to participate in the hike.
Wow. Okay, I want to pause here and issue a very clear warning. Who is going to absolutely hate this trail? Who needs to turn off the deep dive right now and book a trip to Italy instead?
You will fundamentally hate this trail if you are a Type A planner who demands guaranteed reservations. Let me be incredibly clear. The smaller STF mountain cabins on this route do not take bookings for specific beds.
Wait, I can't reserve my bed.
No. You can prepay your $47 fee, but that fee only guarantees you a spot under a roof, not a bed. The policy for bunks is strictly first come, first served.
Oh, man.
Yeah. If you arrive late in the afternoon and the hut is full, the warden will literally hand you a mattress and tell you to find a spot on the floor of the kitchen, the hallway, or the drawing room. That is the strict, unyielding reality of the STF system.
I need that to sink in for people. You are paying up to $60 for the privilege of sleeping on a kitchen floor while other people step over you to boil water.
Exactly. The STF philosophy is that no hiker will ever be turned away into a dangerous storm. They will always take you in. But you are paying for the safety of the shelter, not the luxury of a private bed.
So here is your first major skip-ith signal. Skip this trail entirely if you cannot carry a multi-day pack over boggy, root-covered, sometimes snowy, extremely uneven terrain for 6 days straight.
Right, because there's no easy way out.
Exactly, because once you start walking south from Abisko, there are 0 vehicle bailouts between most of these huts. There are no roads. You cannot just pull out your phone, call a taxi, or catch a bus if your knees start hurting on day 3. You have to physically walk yourself out of the wilderness.
It requires a profound level of physical and psychological commitment. Which brings us to the single most important strategic decision you will make for this trip, deciding exactly when to go.
Yeah, let's do a deep systemic analysis of the 3 distinct periods of the short summer season. Because choosing the wrong week results in a radically different, potentially miserable experience. Let's break down the calendar. We know the season effectively opens in late June when the snow finally melts enough to walk, and it closes in mid-September. What happens in that very first window, late June to mid-July?
This is the legendary period of the midnight sun. Because you are so far north of the Arctic Circle, the sun barely dips below the horizon. The sky just turns a dusky golden color for an hour before rising again.
So it's basically light out all night.
Yeah, it means you could literally be hiking at 10 p.m. or even midnight in full, glorious daylight. You have incredible Arctic wildflowers blooming across the tundra, and the rivers are rushing with massive, dramatic volume from the heavy mountain snowpack melting off.
I mean, that sounds idyllic. You never have to worry about rushing to camp before dark. But what is the catch? Why isn't everyone going in late June?
The catch is biological, and it is severe. The sheer volume of that melting snowpack creates millions of acres of standing water and marshland.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that standing water acts as a massive hatching factory for the peak of the Lapland mosquito season. And we are not talking about a few annoying bugs buzzing around a backyard barbecue.
How bad is it really?
Around the wetter cabins in the north, like Abisko or the marshy flat ground near Abisko, the swarms are relentless. They will cover your jacket in seconds. A physical head net is not just recommended, it is mandatory equipment for your psychological sanity.
Okay, let's say I want absolutely no part of a mosquito hatching factory. I push my trip back. I look at the second window, mid-July to late August.
That is the peak crush. The ground dries out a bit, the mosquitoes start to die down significantly, but the human crowds absolutely explode. This is the busiest time on the trail.
And this is when the classic happens, right?
Exactly. The pinnacle of that chaos is when the Fjällräven Classic runs its 110-kilometer route completely backward from Nikkaluokta heading north to Abisko. For the 2026 season, that event falls right in early to mid-August.
And what does an organized event actually do to the physical reality of the trail? How bad can it be?
It dumps roughly 2,000 extra hikers onto the trail in a single week. The infrastructure simply cannot absorb it gracefully.
Wow. 2,000.
Yeah. If you are a casual hiker anywhere near the Nikkaluokta, Kebnekaise, Selka, or Singi sections during the week of the Classic, you will find the cabins completely full by early afternoon. You will face massive, Hours-long queues standing in the rain waiting for the small motorized lake boats.
That sounds awful.
And perhaps worst of all, you will find that the small hut shops have been entirely stripped bare and sold out of basic food supplies by the wave of people ahead of you.
That sounds like a logistical nightmare. Which brings us to the third window. The time you call the connoisseur's window, early September. Why is this the sweet spot?
Early September is visually stunning. The birch trees and the low alpine tundra plants turn these brilliant, fiery shades of red and gold. Because the first frosts have usually hit, the mosquitoes are completely dead and gone.
Thank goodness.
Right. And because European school holidays are over, the crowds thin out dramatically. You actually feel like you were walking in a vast wilderness again, rather than standing in a queue at an amusement park.
But there has to be a trade-off here too, right? Nature doesn't just give you perfect conditions for free.
No, it doesn't. The trade-off in September is the weather and the clock. From early September onward, you face a very real statistical risk of significant snowstorms.
Oh, snow already.
Yeah. The temperatures drop sharply below freezing at night. The daylight, which was endless in July, shrinks incredibly fast. You lose several minutes of light every single day. And most importantly, the STF huts begin systematically closing their doors and shutting down for the winter from mid-September. You are literally racing against the onset of winter.
Okay, let's map out the geography of these crowds, because they aren't evenly distributed over the 110 kilometers. Where are all these people actually bottlenecking?
The pressure points are highly specific to access. Abisko, the very northern trailhead, is the single busiest access point by a wide margin.
My Abisko.
It is right on the major railway line. It has a highway connecting to it, and it doubles as a massive, world-famous hub for Northern Lights tourism in the winter. Because it is so accessible, that first day of walking south out of Abisko, heading through the national park toward the first cabin at Abisko, sees the heaviest foot traffic of the entire route. You'll be passing people constantly.
And the second busiest choke point?
That would be the Kebnekaise Mountain Station, in the deep south of this section. It sits at the base of Sweden's highest peak. So you have a massive convergence of different groups.
Like who?
You have technical day climbers trying to summit the mountain. You have Fjällräven classic finishers partying. And you have Kungsleden through hikers all converging in this one valley.
So where do you actually get some peace? Where's the wilderness I was promised?
You find it in the middle cabins, places like Jekcha and Selka. These cabins sit at the highest altitude of the trail. They are deeper into the wilderness. They require at least 2 or 3 days of hard hiking to reach from any road.
So you really have to earn it.
Exactly, and that physical barrier naturally filters out the casual day trippers.
Let me push back on something here regarding costs during these peak times. We know airlines use dynamic surge pricing. If I look for a flight to Miami during spring break, the price triples. If I take an Uber in a rainstorm, it costs $80. Do the STF cabin prices surge like Uber pricing when 2,000 people show up in August?
Surprisingly and thankfully, no. This goes back to the core philosophy of the Swedish Tourist Association. The STF fees are nationally fixed.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, a bunk costs the exact same $47 in the peak madness of July as it does on a quiet Tuesday in September. They are not profit maximizing the beds, but what vanishes is availability.
Right, the beds just don't exist.
Exactly. If you want one of the comfortable hotel-style private rooms at the large access stations at Abisko or Kebnekaise, those sell out many months in advance, and those private rooms cost $100 or more per night compared to the bunk bed.
But the transport to get up to the Arctic, that absolutely surges, right? The airlines don't share that egalitarian Swedish hiking philosophy.
Drastically. A one-way flight from Stockholm, Arlanda to Kiruna might be a reasonable $80 to $120 if you book early for a quiet week in September. But if you try to book that same 90-minute flight in August during the Fjällräven Classic,
How much does it jump?
the airlines know exactly what is happening, and that ticket will easily climb well over $200 one way.
Ouch.
Yeah.
And the train? Is the 18-hour train any better?
The train follows a similar, though slightly less aggressive, demand curve. You can get a basic upright seat for the low tens of dollars if you are willing to sit up for 18 hours.
Yeah, no thanks.
Right. And if you want a lie-flat sleeper berth for that overnight journey in the peak of summer, which most hikers do, you are paying $80 to $150, and those berths sell out entirely.
So, synthesizing all this calendar chaos, what is the actionable advice here for you, depending on who you actually are?
It all comes down to your personal flexibility. A solo hiker has the most power. They can flex their travel dates by a few weeks to completely dodge the classic week and find cheaper flights.
But what about families?
Families, however, are in a tough spot. They are almost always trapped by strict school holiday schedules, which means they are locked into peak July or August flight prices and the most crowded trails.
And the photographers.
Photographers and nature purists absolutely need to target early September to capture the best atmospheric light and the red tundra colors. But for everyone, regardless of when you go, the unbreakable rule is buy your STF membership and book your Stockholm to Kiruna transport 2 to 3 months out. Do not improvise your transport.
All right, let's fast forward. You've booked your flights, you've survived the planning, and the day is here. You touch down at the airport in Kiruna. What is the reality of Kiruna? Because I think a lot of people fly to a famous mountain trail expecting to land in a place like, Chamonix or Zermatt, a quaint, charming, snow-dusted alpine village with wooden chalets and fondue.
That expectation is the furthest thing from the truth. Kiruna is not a tourist village. It is a highly functional, gritty, industrial iron ore mining town. It exists for one reason: resource extraction. And the most bizarre, almost science fiction reality of arriving in Kiruna right now is that the entire city is currently physically relocating.
Wait, I need to stop you there. Relocating, like they are packing up their bags. No, you mean they are moving an entire city, buildings and all. That concept is absolutely mind-blowing. How and why does a city move?
It is one of the most incredible feats of civil engineering happening in the world today. The massive LKAB iron ore mine, which is the sheer economic lifeblood of the entire region and employs a huge percentage of the population, has dug so deep and extracted so much ore that it has caused massive ground subsidence under the old city center.
Wait, so the ground is literally sinking?
Yes, the ground beneath the town is literally cracking and sinking into the earth. It became too dangerous to leave the city where it was. So instead of closing the multi-billion-dollar mine, they decided to build a brand new city center a few kilometers to the east.
That is wild. How do you even do that?
They are physically putting historic buildings on flatbed trucks and moving them. They are tearing other blocks down completely, and they are shifting the entire population.
Wow.
It is fascinating to witness from an engineering perspective, but it means as a tourist, you are arriving in the middle of a sprawling, dusty construction zone, not a serene alpine retreat.
So the takeaway is, do not plan your romantic holiday around sipping hot cocoa in Kiruna's historic town square, because the square might be on the back of a truck.
Exactly. Kiruna is purely a transit hub.
So how do you get from this sinking, moving industrial city to the actual pristine trailheads where Kungsleden starts?
If you are heading to the northern trailhead at Abisko, which most people do, you take the SJ or Vi regional trains directly from Kiruna. It takes about an hour, it cuts through some beautiful scenery, and it costs between $7 and $15.
That seems easy enough.
However, the Kiruna train station has also moved because of the city relocation. So if you fly into the airport, you need a taxi just to get across the construction zones of Kiruna to the new train station, and that 15-minute taxi ride will cost you an exorbitant $15 to $25.
And what if you were doing the route backward, starting in the south at Nikkaluokta?
Then you rely on a specific regional bus line called Nikkaluokta Expressen that runs from Kiruna out to the trailhead. But here's where tourists get caught out. You must pay religious attention to the schedule.
Why? Do they not run often?
Public transport up here is sparse and strictly timetable-driven. They might only run 2 buses a day. If your flight is delayed and you miss that connection, there is no on-demand Uber or Lyft waiting for you at the airport. You will simply lose half a day or a full day just sitting in Kiruna waiting for the next bus.
That sounds incredibly stressful. You are dealing with sinking cities, expensive taxis, and missing a bus that ruins your first day.
Yeah.
But there is a huge, palpable vibe shift once you actually get out of Kiruna and arrive at Abisko, right?
Yeah.
You go from this rigid industrial transport anxiety to what exactly? What is Abisko?
The arrival at the Abisko tourist station is an enormous psychological relief. It is a massive, historic, incredibly well-oiled STF facility sitting right on the edge of the wilderness.
So it's basically civilized.
Oh, completely. You walk through the doors, and suddenly there's a proper restaurant serving hot food, a well-stocked shop where you can buy freeze-dried trail meals and specialized camping gas, a dedicated desk to buy your STF cabin vouchers from knowledgeable staff, and real comfortable beds.
That sounds heavenly after that travel day.
You can get a private hotel-style room there starting around $100. It is the ultimate low-stress launch pad. You can repack your bag, eat a great meal, and get a perfect night's sleep before you step out into the wild the next morning.
Okay, speaking of those beds, let's systematically break down the accommodation on this trail. because it's not just one uniform experience. Depending on your budget, there are 4 honest tiers of how you can sleep on the Kungsleden.
Right.
Let's start at the absolute bottom for the purists, the backpacker tier.
The backpacker tier ranges from entirely free to about $30 a night. And this is rooted in a fundamental Swedish cultural philosophy called allemansrätten, which translates directly to the right of public access or the right to roam.
That's such a cool concept.
It is baked into their constitution. It means that wild camping is perfectly legal and entirely free across almost all of the Swedish wilderness, provided you respect nature and stay out of sight of private dwellings.
I really want to highlight how amazing that cultural philosophy is. Unlike in parts of the US or the UK where you are constantly dodging private property signs or paying for permits, in Sweden, the land belongs to everyone. You can just find a beautiful spot by a river, pitch a tent, and it costs you nothing.
Almost anywhere, yes. There are some minor restrictions within the boundaries of the Abisko National Park itself, but generally, the wilderness is yours.
But what if I want, like, a hybrid approach?
Let's say you want a wild camp, but you also want a little bit of comfort. You can choose to pitch your tent right next to the STF cabins. The massive grassy flats around the Allesjar cabins or the dramatic valley floor near Selka are classic spots for this.
And you have to pay for that, right?
Yeah. If you camp at an STF site, you pay a service fee of about $20 for a member. If you are a non-member, it jumps to $30. Down at the Kebnekaise station, it's $25.
So if I'm sleeping in my own tent on the ground, why am I giving the STF 20 or 30 bucks? What's that service fee actually get me?
It grants you full, legitimate access to the cabin's crucial infrastructure. You can cook your meals in their indoor shared kitchen instead of huddling over a stove in the rain. You can use their heated drying room to finally dry out your wet boots. You use their composting toilets.
Honestly, that alone might be worth it.
And, crucially, you get access to the wood-fired sauna. For $20, getting to use a sauna in a drying room after a miserable day of hiking is exceptional value.
Okay, let's move up a tier to the mid-range. This is the $47 to $62 range we talked about. What is the physical reality of these STF mountain cabins? Paint a picture for me.
We are talking about the iconic cabins along the route Abisko, Allesjar, Cheksha, Selka, and Singi. For your $47 to $62, you get a bunk, just a wooden bunk bed.
Like summer camp.
Very much like it. These are shared dormitory rooms holding anywhere from 4 to 10 people. The STF provides pillows and heavy blankets, but for hygiene reasons, you must bring your own travel sleep sack or a lightweight sleeping bag to put over the mattress.
Let me guess. If there are 10 wet hikers in a room, there's absolutely zero privacy.
Absolutely zero privacy. You are sharing oxygen, the smell of wet wool, the inevitable snoring, and the constant rustling of gear bags with up to 9 total strangers.
That sounds intense.
It is. However, you have access to large shared kitchens equipped with gas stoves, and many of these cabins have those incredible wood-fired saunas located down by the river. But you must note this vital detail. There are no showers at the smaller cabins. Plumbed water does not exist out there.
Wait, no showers? I'm hiking for 6 days. How do I clean myself?
You are washing in the freezing river stream. Or more commonly, you take a bucket of hot water from the sauna stove, mix it with cold water, and use a ladle to wash yourself in the sauna washing room.
So it's basically a sponge bath.
Yeah, it is very rustic, and again, as we warned earlier, these bunks are strictly first come, first served.
Okay, next tier up, family. We're talking $100 plus a night. Where are families staying, and why is there a specific tier just for them?
Families looking for standard vacation comfort are really restricted to the 2 major mountain stations acting as bookends on this route, Abisko in the north and Kebnekaise in the south.
What's the setup there?
These stations are essentially large wilderness hotels. They have private family rooms, indoor plumbing, flush toilets, hot showers, and full-service restaurants. Children get heavily reduced SDF rates, and kids under 6 stay completely for free.
But why restricted? Why can't a family of 4 just strap on their boots and hike the whole 110-kilometer trail using the small cabins?
Because the small mid-range cabins we just described are fundamentally not built for family comfort or predictability.
I mean, I guess kids on the floor isn't great.
Exactly. Trying to cram a family of 4, including young children, into a 10-person dorm filled with exhausted, wet, grumpy adult hikers with absolutely no guaranteed beds at the end of a hard day is a recipe for absolute misery. If you arrive late and the hut is full, you cannot ask your 7-year-old to sleep on a kitchen floor.
Right. So base camping is the way to go for families.
Definitely. Families should base camp at these large stations, enjoy a private room, and do beautiful day hikes from there.
Okay, finally, the luxury tier. Let's say I've just had a great year at work. I have money to burn. I want to drop $150, maybe $300 a night.
Hmm.
I want a 5-star hotel experience in the Arctic. I want a massage after I hike.
I have to stop you right there because true luxury, in the way a high-end traveler defines it, simply does not exist on this trail.
Really, no glamping.
No. The absolute ceiling of comfort on the Kungsleden is a private room with an ensuite bathroom and a 3-course hot restaurant dinner at Abisko or Kebnekaise. You might easily pay $150 or more for that private room, but it is still fundamentally a mountain station.
Got it.
It is built for hikers. There is no day spa, there is no room service bringing you breakfast in bed, and there are no high thread count Egyptian cotton sheets.
So if you're looking for someone to carry your bags, pour you champagne, and turn down your bed, you are on the wrong trail entirely. You need to go to the Swiss Alps. Let's pivot to something every single hiker has to deal with: food and groceries. Because if you are walking 15 kilometers a day with a heavy pack, you are burning thousands of calories. You have to eat constantly. And where you buy that food completely dictates your budget. What is the provisioning strategy here?
The strategy is simple and unforgiving. You must stock up in Kiruna before you ever hit the trail.
Why Kiruna?
The large ICA and Coop supermarkets in Kiruna town are your absolute last chance at full-range, normally priced, diverse groceries. You can buy fresh bread, cheese, salami, and cheap pasta. Once you leave Kiruna and step onto the trail, you are entirely at the mercy of the STF's mountain pricing structure.
And how bad are these mountain prices? Let's give the listeners a reality check. List every price of what things actually cost in those tiny little STF cabin shops.
To understand the prices, you have to understand the logistics. Every single item in those remote cabin shops has been brought in by snowmobile sleds dragging over the ice in the dead of winter, or flown in by expensive helicopter drops in the summer.
Wow, okay, so you're paying for the helicopter fuel, basically.
You are paying for that fuel and logistics chain. So a standard freeze-dried trail dinner pouch, just add boiling water, will cost you $8 to $12.
$12 for freeze-dried food.
Okay, a simple small chocolate bar for energy is $2 to $3. A small bag of traditional Swedish crisp bread or Nikkaluokta is $3 to $4.
Okay, what about protein?
A basic tin of fish or a cured sausage is $4 to $6.
And what if you were at one of the big stations, Abisko or Kebnekaise, and you want something prepared for you?
A simple cup of drip coffee at a station is $3 to $4. A station beer, to celebrate finishing the hike, will run you $8 to $10. And if you sit down for a cooked, multi-course restaurant dinner at a station, expect to pay $25 to $35 per person.
So it's basically airport pricing, but in the woods.
Exactly. The overarching rule of thumb on Kungsleden is the further you are from Kiruna, the higher the shelf price, and the significantly smaller the selection. Do not rely on a mid-trail cabin to have a specific dietary item or a cheap meal.
Okay, amidst all this talk of expensive freeze-dried food and $10 beers, here is the one massive financial win. The absolute best freebie on the entire trail: the water. You do not need to buy bottled water, and incredible as it sounds, you do not even need to filter it in most places.
That is right, and it is one of the great joys of hiking in Lapland. The mountain streams and rushing rivers along the northern Kungsleden are incredibly pristine.
So you literally just scoop it up.
Yeah, the water is cold, clean, and perfectly drinkable straight from the source. You just dip your titanium cup or your Nalgene bottle directly into the stream and drink.
That's incredible.
It cuts your costs to zero for hydration, and crucially, it saves you from carrying 3 liters of heavy water weight on your back because water is everywhere.
Let's talk about the culture inside these huts, hut etiquette. Because as we established, this isn't a hotel where a maid comes in after you leave and flips the room.
Yeah.
What is the social contract? What is expected of you if you are staying in these $47 bunks?
When you enter an STF cabin, you are part of a community, and that community relies on labor. You are expected to clean up after yourself completely and meticulously.
So sweeping and wiping things down.
Right. Before you check out in the morning, you must sweep the floor of your dorm, wipe down the stainless steel counters in the kitchen, and take out your own compost and trash to the designated bins.
And what about the heating?
Furthermore, if you use the wood-burning stove to heat the cabin, the social contract demands you go out to the woodshed, grab the axe, chop new firewood, and restock the bin inside so the next freezing hiker who arrives after you has dry wood ready to go.
And what about the noise? I imagine with 10 people in a room, someone always wants to stay up late playing cards.
There is an unofficial but very strictly adhered to 10 p.m. quiet time. Hikers are physically exhausted, and they are getting up at 6 a.m. to start walking again. So by 10 p.m., the cabins go dead silent. If you are allowed after 10 p.m., the community will aggressively correct you.
Good to know. Now, practically speaking, how do you pay for that $12 freeze-dried meal or that bunk bed if you're out in the middle of nowhere? Do they take Apple Pay?
This is a crucial logistical tip that ruins trips if ignored. The cabins have increasingly upgraded their technology to take credit cards, which in theory is amazing. But remember where you are. Mobile coverage out there fails constantly due to weather or satellite issues.
So the card readers just die.
Your credit card payment machines rely heavily on that signal, so you absolutely must bring physical cash as a backup. Budget about 500 to 600 Swedish kroner per night, which is roughly 50 to 60 US dollars in your wallet, just in case the card reader is down and you need to pay for your bed.
So we have thrown a massive amount of prices, logistics, and rules at you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's pull all of this raw data together into a practical daily budget.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to run the hard numbers, all in US dollars, to finally debunk the myth of the free trail. Let's start at the bottom. What is the backpacker budget?
For a dedicated backpacker carrying a tent, you should aim to spend $30 to $45 a day.
And that covers what exactly?
That covers your $20 to $30 campsite service fee at the hut so you can use the kitchen and sauna, and it leaves you $10 to $18 a day for food, assuming you bought almost all of it cheaply in Kiruna.
What's the danger here? What is the hidden landmine that blows up the backpacker budget?
The motorized boats. If you are surviving on a tight, disciplined $30 a day budget and you suddenly reach a lake and are forced to take the $50 Alistar boat crossing because of bad weather, you have just ruined 2 entire days worth of your budget in a 20-minute boat ride.
Ouch. Okay, what about the mid-range budget? The people who want the security of sleeping under a roof in the cabin bunks.
The mid-range hiker is looking at $70 to $95 a day per person. Your STF cabin bunk is $47 to $62. You mix the cheap food you carried with an occasional cabin shop dinner pouch or station coffee, adding $15 to $25.
Then what's the danger for them?
The major financial danger here is the non-member surcharge. Paying an extra $10 every single night because you stubbornly didn't buy the $38 annual membership is just a foolish waste of money.
Now, the family budget. We established they are base camping at the large stations like Abisko. What does that comfort cost?
For 2 adults and 2 children using the private rooms at the stations, you need to budget $200 to $300 a day. You are paying for a private family room, hot restaurant meals for 4 people, and short transport hops on buses or trains.
And if we extrapolate that for the whole trip?
If you extrapolate that to a total 1-week Lapland trip, including your round-trip flights from Stockholm, station rooms, and dinners, a family will realistically spend $2,500 to $4,000.
And the luxury budget. We said there's a hard ceiling because there are no 5-star hotels?
The absolute ceiling is $250 to $400 a day per couple. That gets you the best private station rooms available, multi-course restaurant dinners with wine every single night, paying for a guided mountain climb, and taking all the expensive boat shortcuts so you walk less.
And you literally can't spend more than
You literally cannot spend more than that because there is simply nothing else in the wilderness to buy.
Finally, we always look at the digital nomad angle on this show.
No?
The people who want to work remotely from their laptops in beautiful places. Can you do it here?
If you want to base yourself in the towns of Kiruna or at the Abisko station for a month, working during the week and doing day hikes on weekends, expect to spend $2,500 to $300 for the month. But be heavily warned, you cannot work from the trail itself.
Right. So pulling this all together for you, what is the realistic all-in total for a normal mid-range hiker? If I want to do the classic 6-day traverse properly, flying round trip from Stockholm, getting my STF membership, sleeping in the warm huts every night, taking the boat shortcuts to save my knees, and eating well.
A classic 6-day traverse done properly and comfortably with all those elements included will cost you roughly $1,400 to $1,900 per person total.
$1,400 to $1,900 for a week of walking in the woods where you don't even get a private room. That is exactly why we stated up front that this is quietly one of the most expensive hikes in Europe. All right, let's pivot to strategy. If you are going to spend nearly $2,000 on a hiking trip, you need to avoid the pitfalls that cause people to go home miserable. We have identified 3 specific named logistics traps that ruin Kungsleden trips every single year. Let's start with trap 1, the no-booking cabin trap.
We touched on this earlier, but let's deeply explain the mechanism of how this trap springs on you. STF mountain cabins operate strictly on a first-come, first-served basis. You cannot reserve a specific bed.
And how bad does that get?
The lived reality of this is absolutely brutal in the peak season of August. Imagine arriving at the Selka cabin at 5 p.m. You have hiked for 8 hours. You are tired, you are soaking wet, and the warden looks at you and tells you every single bunk in every dorm is taken.
The trap is sprung.
The trap has sprung. They hand you a thin mattress and point to the floor of the kitchen or a drafty hallway where people are taking off their boots.
I mean, that sounds miserable. It's a daily, high-stakes game of musical chairs played by exhausted athletes, and the loser sleeps on the floor.
It is. The fix for this trap is mandatory, and it requires physical effort. You must carry a lightweight backup tent, even if you plan and hope to sleep in the cabins every night.
So you just have it just in case?
Yes. You carry the tent, and you budget the $20 to $30 service fee just in case you lose that game of musical chairs. If you absolutely refuse to carry a tent, you should skip this trail entirely during the peak season because sleeping on the floor is highly probable.
Trap 2 is the boat or bust crossing trap. I'm fascinated by this. What is the mechanism here?
As we discussed, the trail crosses several large lakes. You have 3 options walk hours out of your way around the lake, row yourself across using public rowboats, or take a motorized boat. The trap lies in the motorized boats, specifically at Alajar, Tusarar, and the Kebnekaise Lake.
Right, they have schedules.
These run on fixed seasonal timetables. For example, the Alajar boat usually departs at 10 a.m., 3 p.m., 5 p.m., and early evening.
So what is the reality if you twist your ankle, hike slowly, and you are running late?
If you miss that last scheduled motorized boat, you are in deep trouble. You are stuck on the wrong side of the water. Now you have to rely on the county administrative board's heavy wooden rowboats to get across. But there is a strict mechanical rule for these rowboats.
Oh boy. What's the rule?
There must always be at least one rowboat left on each shore for hikers coming the other way.
Wait, let me work this out. Like that old logic puzzle with the fox, the chicken, and the bag of grain. If there is only one boat on my side, I row across. And then what? I have the boat, but now the shore I left has 0 boats.
Exactly. If there is only one boat on your side, you have to row across the lake. Then you have to tie a second boat to the back of your boat, row both of them back to your original starting shore, leave one there to fulfill the rule, and then row across the lake a 3rd time to finally continue your hike.
You are kidding me.
I am not. You are rowing 3 lengths of a freezing lake after hiking all day. If you don't want to do that, your only other option is to walk hours out of your way, sometimes involving dangerous river fords.
That is a nightmare. Rowing a heavy wooden boat 3 times across a lake in the wind. And the fix for this trap.
Build buffer days into your itinerary. Never plan to catch the last boat of the day. Target the mid-morning 10 a.m. departure so you have backup options if you are delayed.
And have the cash ready.
And fundamentally, budget the $15 to $50 per motorized boat so you aren't tempted to row to save money. Furthermore, do not plan your flight home out of Kiruna on the exact day you're supposed to finish walking because a missed boat will make you miss your flight.
Trap 3, the Arctic weather and gear trap. Mechanism.
The mechanism here is the dangerous combination of high altitude and extreme northern latitude. The Chekja Pass, which is the highest point on the northern route, sits at 1,150 meters.
So it creates its own weather.
Because of the microclimate, in any month of the summer, even mid-July or August, that pass can turn from sunny skies to driving sleet, gale-force winds, and near-freezing temperatures within the span of a single hour.
And the reality is that people pack for a summer vacation because it's July.
Exactly. Summer hikers show up in light trail running gear and a thin rain jacket. They get caught in a storm on the pass, they get soaked, the wind chill drops, and they risk severe hypothermia.
And if they realize they messed up.
Or they realize their mistake early, but they are forced to buy premium emergency gear at the Abisko shop at a massive, massive markup to survive.
So the fix is just packing right.
The fix is non-negotiable. Pack a genuine, multi-layer waterproof shell, proper insulating layers, and a sub-freezing rated sleeping bag, absolutely regardless of what the calendar says.
Let's pull back and talk about safety more broadly. Because you are out there in the elements, a lot of people ask, is it safe to hike the Kungsleden alone?
From a human and crime perspective, Sweden is incredibly safe. The human threat level on the trail is essentially 0, but the risk hierarchy is heavily, heavily skewed toward environmental dangers.
Like what?
You are dealing with severe, unpredictable weather on high passes, swollen meltwater river crossings that can literally sweep you off your feet, and dense, blinding fog that makes navigation impossible on the open, featureless tundra.
What about solo female travel? Because that is a huge concern for many of our listeners.
Kungsleden is actually considered a top-tier trail globally for solo women because the crime risk is practically non-existent and because the STF cabin system creates this wonderful, self-policing, highly supportive community every single evening. It feels very secure socially.
So you aren't really alone.
You are always walking the same direction as other people, and you see them every night in the kitchen.
But the infrastructure reality is that you are truly on your own if something goes physically wrong, like a broken leg.
Yes. There is absolutely no cell phone coverage between the cabins. You cannot rely on Google Maps, and you cannot just call emergency services from your phone if you fall.
So what do?
You must carry a physical paper map, a magnetic compass, and ideally a satellite messenger device like a Garmin in reach. There are no hospitals between Kiruna and the trail, and if you need a helicopter medical evacuation, it depends entirely on whether the weather is clear enough for them to fly.
And for nightlife. For the people who want a pub at the end of the day.
The only nightlife you will find is swapping hiking stories in a wooden sauna. There are no bars out there until you reach the stations at the end.
Let's get to the fun part. Segment 9, Best Moments and Honest Disappointments. After all this struggle, what are the absolute highs of this trail? Why do people love it?
The highs are transcendental. Standing on the Jekcha Pass on a clear day is breathtaking. You look down into these massive, sweeping, U-shaped glacial valleys that were carved by ice ages thousands of years ago. It feels like you are looking at the dawn of time.
That sounds incredible.
Another huge high is the physical relief of the wood-fired sauna at Selka. Sweating out the grime after a freezing, wet day of hiking is an incredible sensation.
And the midnight sun we talked about in late June and July.
It is incredible. Hiking under a glowing golden sky at midnight with no headlamp is an otherworldly experience you cannot get in the lower latitudes.
Wow. And what about Kebnekaise?
Also, if you are fit and have the budget, paying $150 to $250 to hire a guide at Kebnekaise Mountain Station to climb Sweden's highest peak at 2,096 meters is an unforgettable capstone to the trip.
Did you just do that on your own?
A stern warning, do not attempt the glacier climb unguided. Lastly, the September tundra colors, the vibrant reds and golds stretching for miles, are a photographer's absolute dream.
Okay, we're auditing this fairly. Hit me with the honest disappointments. What sucks about this trail?
The mosquitoes in July. They are significantly worse than any tourist brochure will ever admit. The constant buzzing and biting can turn a beautiful campsite into psychological torment.
Right, the hatching factory.
Second, the lack of showers at the small cabins. After 4 straight days of sweating in rain gear, washing in a bucket in a sauna just isn't enough. You feel the grime.
What about the trail surface itself? Is it all glorious, dramatic mountain ridge walks like you see in car commercials?
No, and Instagram photos often hide this reality. Much of the Kungsleden is surprisingly boggy. Because the tundra is essentially a fragile sponge, you spend hours upon hours walking on wooden duckboards laid over marshland to protect the vegetation.
Oh, those little planks.
Yeah, if you slip off the board, you sink to your knees in mud. It is flat, repetitive, workmanlike walking, staring at your feet to balance on planks. It is not always dramatic alpine ridge scrambling. And finally, paying premium resort prices for basic cabin food or last-minute gear always stings the pride.
All right, what if you are listening to this and thinking, well, this sounds too expensive, too mosquito-heavy, or too risky with the no-booking system? What are the alternatives? Let's look at alternative 1, the Laugavegur Trail in Iceland.
It is a great comparison. Laugavegur is the other iconic Nordic multi-day hut hike. It is much shorter, about 55 kilometers, taking 3 to 4 days. It has very similar cold weather dynamics and a similar communal hut culture.
But how do the costs and logistics compare to Sweden?
Laugavegur is generally 20 to 40% more expensive on a daily basis. The Icelandic huts cost $60 to $90 a night. But here is the massive fundamental difference that Type A planners will love. You must book and pay for those huts in advance.
So you get guaranteed booking, no musical chairs.
Exactly. The pros are guaranteed beds, an absolutely jaw-dropping geothermal volcanic scenery with steaming vents and colored mountains.
And the cons?
The cons are that it is much more crowded per kilometer because it's shorter, and you absolutely do not have that incredible Swedish freedom of wild camping wherever you want.
Alternative 2, the West Highland Way in Scotland.
This is roughly 154 kilometers over 7 days. It is a fantastic, weather-exposed, long-distance walk through the Scottish Highlands.
Do they have huts?
But instead of STF bunks and wild camping, you are mostly relying on established B&Bs and village inns, which push the nightly accommodation cost much higher to $80 to $140 a night.
What are the pros of Scotland over Lapland?
Milder overall weather, you sleep in real soft beds every night, there are hot-cooked meals, and crucially, you pass through historic villages with warm pubs every evening. It is very easy to resupply food.
That's cozier. And the cons.
The con is that it completely lacks the true isolated wilderness scale of the Arctic, and you obviously don't get the extreme midnight sun.
We have finally reached the final segment, the Is It Worth It matrix. We are going to give you our rigid verdicts based on your specific travel style, including exact scores out of 10 and the key USD numbers to remember. Expert, take us through the verdicts.
First, the backpacker. We rate Kungsleden a 9 out of 10 for this group. It is arguably the best value serious wilderness in Europe if you are fit, if you carry your own tent to avoid the bunk fees, buy the $38 STF membership, and strictly keep your spend to $30 to $45 a day.
The mid-range traveler, the person who wants a cabin roof.
7 out of 10. It is worth it at $70 to $95 a day, but only if you are willing to carry a backup tent for emergencies, and if you embrace the anxiety of waking up early to race down the trail for those $47 to $62 bunks. The stress of the uncertainty holds the score down from a perfect 10.
The family.
5 out of 10. It is only worth it if you base camp at the large stations, budgeting $2,500 to $4,000 total for a comfortable trip. Absolutely skip trying to thru-hike the small, overcrowded cabins with young children.
Luxury traveler.
4 out of 10. There is a hard ceiling of $250 to $400 a day, and it buys you a comfortable hiker's room, not a luxury spa. Skip this trail entirely and book a winter Northern Lights lodge in Finland or Norway instead if you want true pampered luxury.
And finally, the digital nomad and solo traveler.
For solo hikers, it is a solid 6 out of 10. The community is welcoming and safe, and your total trip will run $1,400 to $1,900. But for a remote worker needing a laptop connection to answer emails, it is a 2 out of 10. There is zero connectivity on the trail.
So overall verdict.
Overall verdict for everyone, book carefully. Timing is the one single factor that turns a life-changing great trip into a miserable, freezing bad one.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the costs, the mud, and the beauty, I want to leave you with one final thought about all these rigid rules and physical discomforts we've discussed.
Think about it this way. The strict, unyielding nature of the Arctic, the total lack of cell service, the absolute impossibility of booking a guaranteed bed, the fact that you might legitimately have to sleep on the floor if you are late, actually forces a profound disconnection from our overscheduled, highly curated modern lives.
Right, because we are so plugged in.
We spend all year planning every hour of our days. Out there, the lack of bookings isn't a bug in the system. It is a feature. It demands that you live purely in the present moment, reacting only to the weather, the trail, and the physical needs of your body as they come. It forces you to be entirely present.
If this gave you the honest verdict you needed, follow the show. New episodes drop every day. That is the honest verdict from Phil and H's.